The first spark came long before the ruin, not the ruin of nations or empires, or the thousand small betrayals that gnawed the world into a carcass. Those were inevitable, the way rot is inevitable when no one cares to lift a hand. The true beginning was quieter, almost gentle, and no one saw it for what it was. Not even him. Cale stood at the threshold of a dead winter dawn, frost biting through the scars on his knuckles, breath rising like smoke from a furnace long overdue for collapse. The code hung around his neck, etched into an iron plate no larger than a child's palm. Its words were simple, unyielding. They were meant to forge men into pillars, not break them. Honor above all, duty above self. No sacrifice too great for the cause. He had repeated those lines until they carved grooves into the marrow of him. He had carried them through firestorms and broken cities, through the roar of collapsing worlds and the silence that followed. He had measured every choice by their weight. He had never questioned them, not until now. The outpost burned with a quiet, steady flame, not a wild one, not frantic. This was the fire of execution, the kind carried out by men convinced of their own righteousness. Cale tasted iron on the air, smoke, blood, the remnants of a choice made far from here by those who would never see the bodies their orders made. His orders. The code at his chest felt heavier than armor. A child's sob drifted across the frost, thin as cracked glass. Cale closed his eyes. The wind carried the smell of scorched grain and the whispers of those who had begged before they died. Honor above all, duty above self. The words rang hollow. For the first time in a life shaped by obedience, Cale did not recite the final line. His hands tightened. Something old and buried rose in him, like a beast roused by the scent of injustice. Not rage, something colder, clearer, a conviction not granted by the code, but born in spite of it. He unfastened the iron plate. The chain snapped with a brittle clink. The code fell into the snow, half buried, a relic of a faith he could no longer carry. Those who would later tell the tale called it treason. Others called it liberation. He did not call it anything at all. When a code demands the death of the innocent, breaking it is not rebellion. It is duty. Cale turned from the burning outpost and walked away. Every step was a violation. Every step a heresy. Every step the beginning of a man unmaking the world that had made him. Some men arrive in the world with rebellion braided through the marrow of their bones. Their origins are varied and as scattered as the distant embers that needle the winter sky. But the pattern is always the same: damned or anointed, crowned or abandoned. Their defining revolt is never a choice. It's a cosmic throw of dice they are compelled to ride out. Every institution carries momentum. Families stack their expectations like cairns. Governments build masks from law. Religions varnish their fears into scripture. Over time, all that momentum hardens. It narrows. It becomes predictable. And anything predictable eventually softens into rot. When a system calcifies so completely that it forgets why it was built, nature sends in an anomaly. That anomaly is the black sheep, not a failure, not a deviant, not the clan's embarrassment. A reset event, a breaker growing in the fault line where pressure threatens to crush the entire structure. Stagnant bloodlines produce the one who refuses to read from the script. Institutions breed their inconvenient disruptors. Faiths their incendiary prophets. States their reformers, with jaws set like anvils. These individuals come out blunt instead of pious, sharp instead of compliant, solitary instead of groomed. Whether praised or condemned, they drag tension behind them like a plow scraping through stone. And wherever they pass, others are forced to confront whether their devotion is real or just inherited. The black sheep carries instincts that grind against tradition. They become the reminder no one wants to see. Lineage isn't destiny, and repetition isn't truth. Their role isn't rebellion for spectacle, but rebellion as necessity, a sacred pressure, a duty that thrums beneath the ribs like a second heartbeat. They test commitments simply by existing. Evolution would call them a wild card. Myth would call them a wanderer, born under an eclipsed star. Psychology would call them individuation armed with a blade. The solitude they inhabit isn't exile, it's elevation. They stand beyond the walls, not because they were cast out, but because the view is clearer out where the wind has teeth. Stitched into the antihero's mythos, this figure stops being merely a familial anomaly. He becomes the last sane man standing in a house built on inherited ghosts. He doesn't reject his lineage because he despises it. He rejects it because he sees the hairline fractures beneath the paint. He smells incense where the others smell sanctity. He feels the weight of obligations he never consented to bear. The antihero is the death knell of stagnation. Phrases like, "it is what it is," or "we've always done it this way," are poison to his sanity. He ends cycles that have no business surviving. Cycles of weakness, hypocrisy, moral inbreeding. He cuts short the slow decay that would have taken the whole lineage quietly in the night. He just speeds up the timeline on extinction. And he does it without hatred, only clarity. He breaks the old code so a truer one can stand without trembling. When a heritage clings to tradition instead of truth, he is the hand that severs the knot, not in spite of loyalty, but in service to something that outlives loyalty. He becomes the final chapter of one story and the first spark of another. The lineage ends in him not as a failure, but as a seal closing a tomb that needed closing, a hinge snapping open towards something unbound. This black sheep is not an ending. It is correction, deliberation, discernment sharpened into steel, the blade drawn from tradition's scabbard. In the logic of an antihero, that is not betrayal. It is fulfillment.